Yo, what's up, Elijah? We are here.
What's up,
Yeah,
Sam?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Week two. Week two of Social 19.
Yeah, it's big. Yeah, it's really big. It's a big it's gonna be I think it's gonna be a good semester. It feels like as though there's a lot happening and
hmm
I think we know it's going on. So had a few good classes.
Yeah. Laurie, I wish I would have seen the one with Laurie yesterday. How'd that go?
It was good, man. Lori set that you all up well. She did it really a great job of kind of very much laying out what it is, what her work is, and what our work is, and what your work is
Wow.
in conversation. So,
Right.
but there's so much more to say, right? She just has such a, uh, there's just so much more, but it's all good. Yeah.
So much.
So,
Yeah.
I know you got to take off, and we have
Right.
a guest today. So I think we had a couple questions from the other day, as I recall, from last Thursday that we never got to.
Mm.
The one thing
Jeff's gonna
actually
pull those
isn't
up.
it isn't actually a question. However, it's a question for our German audience. Sam asked you to respond to something, so I have it pulled up, and we're gonna watch it for a second.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. Okay, and then I'll pop off. I'll be back though.
All right, I'll see you.
Okay.
What's the difference between white Europeans and white Americans?
I actually think white Europeans are more like ignorant. Like they're way more racist to your face than like white Americans are.
More racist to your face?
Yeah, I stayed in a German host family as like part of my exchange program, and like my host sister said the N-word. Awkward.
And wait, in German?
No, it's the same thing. Like there's no. They have like a German word called like Digga, but it still means like.
Yeah. It's the same. Yeah.
It's just like everyone can say it instead of like.
And
All right.
and how many people said it? All right, I have a response. So I've heard from quite a number of German speakers about that, saying that different ways of saying that's not what the word means, and it's a very complicated word. Or it's very complicated. I mean, obviously, but it's not exactly what it means. But what's interesting is that and I've heard this from somebody else, that people think it's what it means, right? Which is kind of really fascinating to me. But at some point in time, I definitely want to have a conversation, another conversation. We had Arnica on a couple weeks ago, and I would like to have a conversation just about a few other things. And like friend. But Arnica was saying it very much means dude. And but what's interesting is if people think that it means that, right? And that, if we believe it's real, then it's real in its consequences. So I had a very similar thing with a term among Koreans, which, a term that kind of means black guy or black dude, but some Koreans see it as a really kind of an offensive word. So the word whatever something means literally isn't necessarily what it means in some people's minds. And so I think that's like, it's such a fascinating way of language, and how quickly different ideas about meanings of things can spread on the internet, And so once again, that one of the fundamental dictums in sociology is if we believe it's real in its consequences. That's the Thomas theorem. And so if some people believe it's real, then it's real in its consequences for some people. And so I'm not saying that. What's fascinating to me is you can have these subpopulations of people that can quickly decide that something is or is not offensive, or it means a certain thing. And then, it just takes off like a flash online, and then it starts to mean that for some people. We have a lot of the same thing in English. And as I learn, right, if I wasn't working with students on a regular basis, there are words that I use or have used that at some point in time, I just can no longer use, that I think, well, but it doesn't mean that. But anyway, so a few people, and for me, in my classroom, it only takes one single person out of 800 to decide that something I've said is offensive, and then it all just comes tumbling down, So if they think something that's really not at all what it means or is going on, then I have to respond to the authorities, so to speak, right, or to whoever. So it's kind of really, yeah. So I'm right. So what I think what's going on here is that people hear it, and then some people have decided that it is the N word because it sounds like the N word, even though it means dude or guy or whatever. And yeah, so that's just really, man, that's crazy, man. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So if I'm black and I'm dropping the N-bomb with all my friends, basically what I'm saying to them is, hey, dude. Right. So, or me, I'm calling people bro. Hey, but Jeff, then I think what we'll do, let's bring Warren on, and then we'll take some questions from yesterday's stream that I never got to. I want to move on with this conversation with Warren. It's really, so let's do that. Mr. Smith.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Really great to see you. Great to meet you. We just met 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
I've seen so much of your teaching now. I feel like I have already met you.
Yeah. Well, I've watched a couple of your clips, and that first one in particular, the one that kind of put you in a certain space, right? It gave you some kind of level of notoriety, and I was blown away by how thoughtful and interesting it was. Like, really, it was just so really very interesting. It was cool. I was just following you through, Hey, so tell us something about yourself.
Well, I live in Massachusetts from North Carolina. I went to graduate school not for any of the not for sociology or philosophy or any critical thinking, but for filmmaking. And so I still teach at Emerson College, but I teach filmmaking classes. Well, in filmmaking, it's kind of the wrong term now. It's all video production. So the students that are running your cameras and utilizing technology like you're doing in your classroom, it's content creation across the internet. There's so many possibilities with that, but I kind of stumbled into all of this just as being a teacher as well, a full-time teacher at the high school level, which that video you were referring to just was a chance encounter one day where I was teaching multimedia and content creation, basically, or digital art is how I would describe multimedia, whether it's photography or photo editing, video editing, all these technologies. And I really was intrigued because about how to utilize these kind of conversations, because I was faced with the predicament of how do we make projects for these students. The objective is to teach them how to operate the camera. And what are we going to record? It's great having conversations. And that conversation in that clip actually just came out in the lead up to doing a school broadcast. There was this student who was about to appear on camera and be a news anchor, and he was getting cold feet. So I was like, let's just do a warm up. Let's just have a conversation. That's how it got caught on camera. And I had been intrigued with like sharing things on YouTube and having kind of a little teaching portfolio. And I hadn't really uploaded it in a while, but that's how it got online. So I think what you're doing is like really cool. It's really cool.
And that particular clip that Warren's referring to that I first watched was you walking a student through why or how it is that J.K. Rowling is offensive or transphobe or whatever, right?
Yeah, I was examining like a presupposition. I think the question was, how have your views on Harry Potter changed as a result of J.K. Rowling's bigoted opinions? And within there's a presupposition baked into that question. So
right.
The natural flow is, all right, well, first we need to address that, and then you go layer by layer.
And what you did in that video, it's so fascinating, is you just allowed them to walk through step by step, and you didn't offer any assessment or judgment. I had no idea what you thought. There's no sense at all what you're thinking. You're doing what a teacher does in a masterful way, just saying, hey, okay, let's walk this through very logically, right? And
I think you do that often as well. Like you don't.
Yeah, well, I do, but Yeah, no, that's right. But yours, I think because you were speaking to one person, it was just exceptionally masterful. And the student got to the end and said, "Well, I guess I'm not sure I really think that. I'm not sure what I think." It's just like, okay. And you didn't say hooray, like, "Oh, great. That's what I wanted for you." You were just like, oh, "Okay, what a teacher does." Say, "Yeah, of course, Knowing, of course, you knew, or we know that when you're 20 years old, you don't know what you think. You really don't. Or 17 or 16 years old, whatever it is. It's just like, oh my
He was
gosh.
like 18. Yeah.
Yeah. It's and that's good. And that's the beauty of having folks who walk through. Um, yeah, that's cool. And so you then came to our attention also because you watched a video that I did, or that Jeff edited. We did on guns, where a student from few years ago was talking to a couple international students about why she's really into guns. And that video it went out when we initially put it up. It went all sorts of places, but then more recently, in the past 6 months or so, it really got a lot of play.
I actually pulled from multiple videos there was the other conversation was around I think it was the CEO of Papa John's. That conversation I thought was really interesting and really important. So I'm constantly thinking about, with this YouTube channel, okay, what would make a good video? And it's about people that resonate and what they're doing. And
Yeah.
I had been seeing your content, and I'd seen your content 2 years ago or something. So I had been aware of it for a while, and I was like, I would like to tackle this. And then in structuring the video, and I was like, well, okay, so I just pulled from the conversations that I thought were most intriguing. So yeah, there were those two. Then I try and add on. Then I always try and ask myself, all right, what would something be to balance it out? I'm like praising this person. What would a critique be? You know what I mean? And like, so I end with what would a potential critique be?
Yeah. And then there was a critique from, I don't know, I forget what it was. I don't pay attention to critiques.
It was
Jeff
weird
does.
that there's some interesting videos about you out there, and like most of them are just, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. It's if you want to talk about it at some point.
We can do it right now, actually. Go ahead. Yeah.
What is it like seeing all these YouTubers picking up on your content and just kind of content farming off of Soch 119, where it's like one a week, like Rattlesnake TV. It's some of them, they're getting like hundreds of thousands of views.
What's Rattlesnake TV? What is that?
It's so we've seen like the figure of the rattlesnake on the t-shirt, "Don't tread on me." I think he adopted that as his, so Rattlesnake TV, which we can logically connect that as conservative probably. So what he's covering is mostly culture war topics. And it's like, professor has had it up, is fed up with blah, 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 and fill in the spaces, right? It's like, Sam makes it sound like you destroy someone. But it's worth looking at that channel, because he's probably made 10 videos about you, and but there's been a variety.
So I think I'm kind of laughing, but the truth is, it's really not. I don't like it. First off, I don't know. 90% of them I don't follow. Jeff does a little bit of following, but I don't, and maybe I should more. I'm not really sure. I don't follow videos. I don't track when videos go viral, or I don't track views. Yes, I usually have no idea how many people are watching the stream or watching videos. And after class yesterday, Jeff just happened to say, hey, at our peak, we were at 320 people watching, and I was, oh, yeah, okay. But I don't, if I follow that stuff, then I kind of will get caught up in it. And certainly if I follow critiques or positive or negative stuff, then I'll get kind of caught up in it. And I've been teaching long enough that I find that I'm best served if I'm just doing what I've been doing. Just be myself and don't worry about it. But it doesn't serve me really when people do that, because in those kinds of things, professor is fed up. Now, up until now, it hasn't been a problem for me. But at some point in time, there are certain populations of people who will think, oh, that is what Sam's doing,
Mhm.
and they won't ever bother to watch the original video, and they'll think that I'm promoting that stuff just because it's out there, and I'm not
Mhm.
promoting it, and so that's a bit of a problem for me. And I wish in the long run, I wish it didn't happen. So, but it's like dancing with the devil, right? It's like, well, you're putting the stuff out there, but I'd
Right.
like to see them put some things out there that they actually disagreed with, because there's a lot of other stuff that they would disagree with.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so that kind of leads me to that one clip that I pulled for the critique portion, which was very strange because it was almost a live talk show, uh, clearly conservative. And they were talking about like a blacklist of professors, and they're like, we have a new teacher to add to the blacklist, and this is why. And they play this 10-second, like 8-second clip that clearly I was like, okay, there's a lot here to disagree with, and so I'll use it. But it was just so short, and they're clearly not watching the whole thing. I thought, wait a minute, I have only seen conservative YouTubers talking about, because there is something I can see why it would appear. It's so rare to have someone who is pure in the sense of treating this as truly an academic exercise and coming at this as a professor, like blocking out the noise. It's not about business, money, growing a channel, sponsors. It's you're doing this first and foremost as a teacher, a professor.
Yeah.
And that's just so rare. Like there's no one. I'm amazed that there's not more people doing this. Honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of strange. So they naturally assume, especially because I'm a sociologist, that I must be, far left, and you just got to kind of grab one of those things. And then, what happened a couple years ago, um, Fox and a couple of these, I don't know who, Jeff can say who it was, but a couple of these channels, but like Tucker Carlson did a couple of hit pieces on me. Luckily, in one of them, they called me the wrong name. So Sam Williams. So whoever works at Penn State named Sam Williams got a bunch of hate mail. It was like one of the, but it was 8:00, man. Tucker did a thing at 8:00, man. I was getting hate mail every, like 15 seconds or so,
What was his complaint?
It was brutal. Well, they picked a clip. That's probably maybe the same clip. Me with talking to these two students and, just talking about inequality and
the clip came from a lecture that Sam did during quarantine. So he's in front of the green screen with like the slides behind him.
Yeah.
And it's Sam has a quote that was from a leaked diversity equity training from Coca-Cola, in which it was telling white people to be less arrogant, less ignorant. And Sam, his point was saying, what does this even mean? Like, who is Coca-Cola saying? Like, who isn't ignorant? Who isn't like all of these things that you could possibly say? And then
I was critiquing that.
You were critiquing that. And then you were making
then
he made a joke about like, oh, have you oppressed somebody? And the guy was like, no. And Sam was like, well, did you leave your house today? And they took that as like a serious thing. So yeah, that's what. Yeah, it was Mark Stein who picked up the story, but it was on Tucker's show. Yeah.
And then I'm just having fun with these guys, going like, they're the oppressors. Here you are, right here, man. And I'm laughing. I mean, we're having fun with it, right? So. How can you not? And I said, and they deliberately did it because it was clear that I said, hey, this is a clip from this diversity training. Like, imagine this is diversity training. You're going to tell white people all to be less ignorant and stupid and arrogant and, whatever, oppressive. And so they watched the clip. They knew what I was doing, that I was critiquing it, but they just decided they needed to martyr me. And so they grabbed the part of the clip and then said that those were my words, and which is pretty evil, man. That's pretty evil. That was yeah. I mean, it's really evil in a way, because those are the things that get people, that lead to violence against people. There's a lot of crazy people out there. So they could have just shown the whole segment, and they could have said on Fox News and said like, wow, this is exactly what university professors ought to be doing, pushing back against this stuff. But they didn't. They needed a somebody
Yeah,
to beat up on. Right?
exactly.
You know,
And
yeah.
it's the very nature of doing this. It's going to put a target on your back because it's so rare to be able to log onto YouTube and actually watch a real class, almost
Mhm.
like even live. And so you're going, but what? So you have to balance that question: do I do this or do I not? There's so much good that can come from it. There's always going to be potential downsides and trade-offs.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons that there's not more people doing it, because there is something about within the very nature of putting yourself out there. And I've experienced this myself, but I know what that's. It's not pleasant, but the only alternative is to not put yourself out there.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's it's the strange thing, but it's hard for people to understand sometimes.
Yeah, I'm with you. Um, you know, we've only had a few of those. I haven't had any recently. I mean, really for a year or so. It's been probably a year, and it's surprising it doesn't happen more often, to be honest with you. Uh, but it's really good that it isn't. You know, because anybody can take a little statement here or there. But I think probably right now, maybe my credibility among those people on, you know, the far right is enough that they sort of disregard me if they don't, you know, if they're not, like you're saying, they're mining the videos
Right.
for material
Yeah.
and then misusing it. You know,
Yeah.
so
There's also
yeah.
something in the safety of having the full context provided that people can go see. It's not like this was leaked or something, or it was just one portion of one class that makes it online. It's you've established yourself in this. And honestly, I was hoping to probe your brain about this, of what the future will look like, because it seems to me, if we follow the logic, there there's so much like efficacy in what you're doing and how you're doing it. It would seem logical that the future more people would be doing this. All the way through the way you take attendance, just through
Yeah.
every way you've set this up. I'm really intrigued in how you got to setting this up, any pushback you have faced. So for Emerson, for example, I'm not allowed to film my classes and just share them online, first and foremost, because they want people to pay for it.
Right. Yeah.
Right now, there's some classes like at Harvard. I used to be one of the I used to go travel there to operate the camera for the Harvard Extension School. So there are some classes designed where they have the people within that department come in and run camera for those classes to be, but they're not just transmitted to the world through YouTube. I don't believe. I think you have to pay for them still. So there's
Yeah.
still this commodification
Yeah.
aspect of it.
Well, I think in this case, we initially started recording videos way back in the day to make an online course out of my class. And what I said, you know, they said, well, you know, why don't you just sit in front of a camera and talk? And I said, I'm not doing that. Like, nobody wants to take a class like that. They do because they don't have an alternative. But so we put 3 cameras in the room. This was probably in 2006. And we put 3 cameras in the room, and then, you know, we took the footage out on the cards, and we, you know, synced it all up, and my videographer cut up the footage, and that was the foundation, excuse me, of the online course. And then we were redoing it, and so we had to just keep updating the classes. And then one day we said, hey, wait, we could use a switcher. Okay, so we used a switcher, and then one day my person on the switcher, and this was then later, this was maybe 2011 or something, he just hit the go live button. I don't know why he did, but then there were a few people watching, and former students mostly, you know, people, and they said, oh, that was really cool, do it again. So then we just started going live, and then I got permission from different folks at the university. You know, they came in the class, the president and my former dean. But the president used to come to class a lot, you know.
That's so cool. I have so much
Yeah.
respect for that. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's so cool to see that a president of the college and the dean who are willing to, innovate and be like,
Yeah.
go for
Yeah.
it. When so
Yeah.
many other
Well,
people couldn't.
yeah, no, that's right. Well, and some of it also, I was working with there was a guy here who was heading our teaching and technology group, the whole group. His name is Cole Camplees. And this guy, Cole, was, man, he was the most forward thinking technology and education person I had ever met in my life. He's now one of the VPs down at Texas at Austin, but I mean, he opened everything up for me. He watched one of my videos one time that we had made, a short, and probably in 2009 or 2010, and he was the first person that came along and said, "This is amazing." You know, like no one had ever really said that. And I said, "Well, what's amazing about it?" He said, "Just see you're doing it. Where'd you get the technology? How'd you know to do this?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I just asked students if they would pitch in, and students jumped in, and that's kind of how it all kept going. And now, you know, we have Dernisha running this everything down in the big room, and she recruits her team, and then Jeff is running stuff behind the scenes, and yeah, so it's fun. So you watched class yesterday,
Yes.
and yeah, what stood out for you from that?
Yeah, I'm curious. I got a sense of what you were trying to accomplish in the class, but through having these conversations, and it's a great topic to explore. There's a lot of interesting, like for me, logical questions to be had. I'm curious that in your own mind, are there any, and maybe you don't want to share this with the students yet, but are there any kind of end goals that you kind of might privately have, or you're keeping in like the recess of your mind that you're hoping to get through, like through these exercises, like an outcome that you're trying to illustrate that you can't just say, the students have to reach it themselves. And that's kind of the whole point of like this conversation yesterday. Is there, I don't know, maybe you don't want to explicitly state it, but is there anything you could explicitly share that, like an observation that you've come to about these issues that you're trying to get the students to?
I think I could say that regardless of the issue that I'm talking about, I have some sense of what the intersections, where the intersections are of perspectives. Okay. So when Dixon came up, that fourth volunteer who was from Liberia, I knew that he's going to have a different take on Black pride, right? I knew that because that's just, you know, whatever, it's what I do, right? So I didn't know precisely what position he would take. So it would be something like that. Hey, let me bring this guy up. He's going to say something. It's a little bit different, right? The woman who is from who is Puerto Rican, she, you know, there are probably like 10 Puerto Rican students in the class, and every one of them would have said something a little bit different, would have approached it differently. But I didn't know, so I didn't know like which of the 10 it would be, but I know how people are going to think about things, right? So it's kind of like, well, let's see where we go here. So this kind of thing, right? I suspected that regardless of which white student I brought up, they probably haven't thought about this a lot. And some people have. There's probably maybe 20% who really would have a lot they could riff on Black pride. But the other 80%, man, probably not. So, okay. So I think it's kind of more like that. I have some sense of where the conversation can go, but once it gets going, it's going to find its own legs. And it's going to take its own path. Like I know where we're going to enter the forest. And regardless of where the exit is that I see, I just know, well, but it's not going to be an exit that I imagine. But I kind of have an idea of all the different exits. Yeah.
That's interesting. So when you were in the forest there with the student from Puerto Rico, there seemed to be this observation of like the difference between the pride of color versus the pride of one's nation. Multiple students seem to be bringing this up, which totally makes sense to me. I mean, you take any nation, and in that case, you're right, because when we say white pride, it sounds there's something, but when we say I'm proud to be an American, right? So things seem to click into place. So for me, that was kind of my takeaway from that conversation. I was like, okay, we have this logical conundrum. This seems to be the best solution. And there seemed to also be this this conversation around like group identity. Okay.
Yeah.
So in the back of my mind, the interesting question is, when does group identity go too far?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Well, we'll get there in the
That's
semester at some
cool.
level.
Yeah.
And we may have gone there yesterday, but you run out of time. There are just so many things to do. And that would have been really the good question. Like, there's a perfect one. When would Black pride go too far that you've now started to alienate people, right? That's actually a really, really nice question that I didn't ask, that I wish I would have asked.
That was your first class though, right? Of the semester.
Nah, it was my third.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
But tomorrow's class is on DE and I.
Oh, interesting.
And we're just going to put it right out in the center of the room. But all right, let's talk about this, right? Which goes well beyond race. I mean, it goes on to lots of things. And we're just going to kind of take a look at, well, how are y'all, you 20-somethings, how are you thinking about this? Because a lot of the adults are all up in arms about it.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear their perspectives on it and their willingness to jump into these conversations. And honestly, it blows my mind that, I mean, they all know that it's being broadcasted as well and recorded and shared. So I have so much respect for the dean, everyone that's making it possible, you, the students that are participating in this. Just real quick on one more logistical question, like, do you kind of build that into the syllabus, like, so students are aware of what you're doing, like they understand like how this works, like, or clearly it's not affecting enrollment. If anything, it seems like it would increase enrollment, which goes against the traditional thinking.
Right. Yeah. Well, as a filmmaker and a videographer, that you put a camera in the room and it doesn't really change people's behavior very much. I wish it would, but that's how we can have these like reality TV shows. I mean, sometimes people will act for the camera, but mostly they don't, and so they forget it's there. In this case, all the students sign off. They sign, they give us permission to film. They have to, or we can't let them up. We don't let them up. And they know, and they'll pretty quickly learn to realize that they can trust me, that there are no gotcha moments. This is just not about that. I had a conversation with, actually, on the very first day. I talked about what we're doing. I've never talked about the live stream or the cameras or anything. We just go in and we do it.
Cool.
But what happened was last spring, so many students were asking questions about it. Like, they just wanted to know, like, oh my God, at the end of the semester. So I started out that way this year. I just thought it was better. And actually what happened was, we have more volunteers at this stage in the semester. We're 1.5 weeks in. I have more volunteers than I've ever had at this stage.
What do you think that is? Why is that, you think?
I think people love the challenge. There's some people that they're shy. They don't want to. They really want to come up. They'll talk to me after class. They'll say, "Oh, I so want to volunteer. I so want to have this opportunity, but I'm just shy. I don't know. I don't know." And then I'll sometimes say, "Hey, what if we pick a topic where you won't have to say a lot, and you definitely won't be challenged too hard. So you'll just really have to speak into the microphone and sit there."
What you're describing?
Like, what if we do that for you? And then they'll say, oh yeah, I would love that. Well, what will I have to say? I'm like, don't worry about it. I'll make it really simple. You'll basically say nothing more than just what's right in front of you, And so there are people like that are just really. I have one woman last year who's painfully shy. Oh my God. But she did it. And I just made something just for her, that it was just her, like, hey, I'm going to give you this opportunity. She was on the table for about 5 minutes. We were talking about something. I don't remember what it was. So we have that. Yeah.
There's so much utility in this medium for students getting over speaking publicly, right? All these, there's just, and so as a multimedia teacher, I was struggling with this because it doesn't fit within your job description. Your job is to teach how to operate the camera and edit
Yeah.
video. But if we utilize the camera and video editing in the classroom, it can transform the educational experience and have so much utility. And some people seem to struggle with seeing that. And especially, it seems like as a sociology professor, you're teaching socializing, and human behavior is always kind of in the back of your mind. So it's just really cool to see. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked, but this does take me to my next question for you.
Okay.
So let's say you have a white student that goes up there. So me, if you were to ask me to describe, Warren, what is Black culture? How would I do? There's got to be some apprehension. Is it possible for a white student to describe Black culture without sounding like they're stereotyping?
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah. Hang on, I'm writing that question down. Yeah. Yeah, that's how I come up with the questions. Just like, well, usually I come up with them. I get them from Lori.
That's gotta come in handy.
Yeah. Oh, man, she's just masterful. She's just like, okay, turn your phone. If I don't turn my phone, well, she'll make me turn my phone on. You got to record this because I'm going to talk fast. And then in a minute, she'll give me 12 questions. I'll think, oh, okay, that was great. But yeah, because everybody has, like, let's say I ask you a question. Hey, tell me everything you know about Sri Lanka. Okay. What do you know about Sri Lanka?
I really don't know much about Sri Lanka.
Okay, but you said much. You didn't say anything. So now I would go to the next step. Well, tell me the one thing that you know.
Oh boy.
And then you would start talking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it could be about Sri Lankan culture. And then you'll just start going here and there, and you'll go around, and then you'll grab onto something. Like, okay, yeah, you got that. Okay, you're on. Yep, you got it. So now say a little more. And then what happens is, but now Sri Lanka, that's a little bit different, right? So let me just say it was Islam, right?
Mm-hmm.
Say, what do you know about Islam? Like, I don't know anything. And I'm like, well, no, you know something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then they start, and sometimes, people will say something that, let's say you're talking about Islam. I'm asking some American student. It doesn't have to be a white student. It could be a black or a brown student, and it doesn't matter. And they say something that I'm like, okay, Muslims are going to feel some kind of way about that, right? So some Muslims will. And so I would stop. After they made that comment, I would say, hey, listen, because the last thing I want is for people to comment on the video like, oh, that student is ignorant, right? Because it'll get back to that student. And I don't want that. Like, I invited you up here. You took the risk to come sit on this table, having no idea what this knucklehead is going to ask me, right? And I'm out here, I'm on the table, and that's a huge risk. I'm 18 years old. I'm 19 years old. This guy knows I don't know anything about. Probably it's as likely as not that I really am going to just be pulling something out of somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so then so you say something that's a little bit risky, and I'm going to say, well, hang on a second. Hang on. Actually, so here's what Muslims would think about that. Right. And then I will say it in a way that doesn't throw them under the bus at all. Right. In any way. So then it's like, okay, so we skirt around that a little bit, and then we go forward, and I'll be like, okay, what else? Right. And I've never it's rare that someone says anything that even we think we have to cut out. It's rare. It hasn't happened maybe once in the past 2 years.
Because they're speaking in good faith, I imagine.
Yeah, they're speaking in good faith. And sometimes we don't know it, but somebody will grab something, a commenter will grab something that someone says, and then everyone will just start going off on that. And then Jeff will say, like, hey, we got to just pull that out because these people, they just got stuck on that for some reason. It's not even a problem. It's like not an issue at all. Like what they said was really fine, but was very fine, but somebody just does it. And so we really protect as much as possible. We protect students, and I'm protecting them when I'm talking to them. I'm listening. I have a really good understanding of what's going to fly and what's not going to fly. So I'm like, I got your back here, because if someone comes after you, they're coming after me. and
Yeah.
I don't want that.
You can sense that there is that. It's like an invisible safety net that you expertly have. You've been doing this for 4 decades now, which is interesting for the audience to note. If anyone, it's remarkable. But like that was honestly the concern around the students seeing comments online. That was the concern for me that I was faced with, even with that viral clip about J.K. Rowling. Even though the student doesn't appear on camera, no one knows who that student is. But I don't see his face, but the student knows who he is. So if people are saying, which people will do online, he might see and he will see various comments about him.
Yeah.
And he's the only one who knows that's him. But how does it? So that's where the only logical pushback for an exercise like that I was faced with. But the fact that you have the students, but again, you're at the college level. That's the beauty of it. You are working with adults here. They need to be learning how to be adults. So
well, that we all do, and I guess like I have to model that, but still it's a risk. It's always a risk. It's a risk for everybody who's there. We have a student right now who works for me, and she was working for me last semester. She's part of my team. She came up and she did a piece. She did this segment, and it was great. And we put a short out. Jeff put a short out that kind of took a little bit away from some of the context of what she was saying, but still, she got a lot of she got some kickback online from her people in her home country, right?
Oh,
And so she said, but it's okay. Like I don't. And I said, no, why don't we do this? Why don't we do it class? We'll do a segment on this, and we'll show the clip in class, and then you can talk about what happened, and I'll invite other people from your country up to also contribute to what's the problem, like what's going on. So we're going to do a whole piece on that, and she's looking forward to that. So am I. But that that it doesn't happen. It happens way less often than one would imagine.
Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons you have such high enrollment and engagement is so high, because it's watching this. You're right. There is an inherent risk, but there's inherent risk in real life. It's watching kind of this high wire act in real time where it could go. There's a sense of like it's very safe, but there's this sense of something. It's hard to articulate, but I think that resonates. Authentic, honest conversation around real topics that kind of have that element of we're on a high wire, but this is a necessary journey to take because this is what education is about. Students just lock into that, and it's one of the things that's it's just missing in many classrooms.
No, it's missing in so many places. We have 800 enrolled in the course, and there are 128 people who have applied to volunteer.
Wow.
And that's just that's a lot, right? And it'll go up to 170 or 180 by the end of the semester.
College has to love this, though. They must.
Well, yeah, no, hang on. How would I say that? I think they can often think about risk. There's probably a little bit of a risk, I think.
Yeah.
Every institution is going to think about that. You don't want to deal with the headaches, like when Tucker did his thing, and I didn't just get the emails, the university got the emails, and it was fine. The president at the time, he had my back. I knew him well. And he just told the rest of the folks at the administration, hey, just don't just let we're just going to ignore this. It's fine. But, then the board of trustees gets involved and because they're watching Tucker, and basically no one's watching the full clip. He's just told people what to say. Here's what this knucklehead is doing. And then, people just believe him. And it's a really good lesson, which I've used many times with my students, which is you don't know what actually is going on in that clip. You don't know what the context is. And so anyway, well, anything else about class that kind of stood out from you? And
let's see. I mean, those were the main ones. Yeah, your goal as an instructor beyond just considering these issues. We talked about that. Is there anything?
Yeah, and again, really the most important goal is the most important thing is that I know if I just talk, students would tune me out because I would just be a talking head. They don't want that. Like, I don't want that. I can't even hardly listen to. I can put it on my headphones. Maybe someone who's given a lecture or something. If I put it on my headphones and just listen to the audio, I can mostly get through it, but my mind will start to wander. And I don't even have ADD. You know what I mean? Well, maybe I do, but I know that it just won't matter. Which is odd because, I always say I'm at the stage in life when I actually have a little bit of wisdom. I really have something to say about a few things in this world, but it just doesn't matter. And so, but they want to hear from each other, and other people want to hear from students. The majority of people in this country, I would say, probably definitely think that students are soft, and at some level, they're misguided. The majority of people think that.
Yeah, it's true.
That's not like 90%, but it really is. And so I'm offering a window into it. And I get emails all the time, people saying, oh my God, thanks for showing me giving me hope in this country. I think I have the idea that all professors are lunatics. And I said, well, actually, I'm on the inside, and very few professors are lunatics. I'm more of a lunatic than most people because I put cameras in my room. But honestly, people are trying to do the right thing. They're trying to do a good job. They're trying to be fair. They're trying to be true to their field. They're whatever their field is, they really are.
Yeah, there is this, because you're right. There is this concern amongst many people that there is a postmodern creeping, a Marxist element in some colleges and certain classes. I myself, I mean, I have textbooks that there's some interesting views, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't study Marxism and things. But this ties to the last question I'll ask you about. It ties to this because when your wife was talking to the students, I thought it was interesting how she was like, just because someone has an emotionally based argument versus an argument that's based on objective logic, sometimes we're going to have a position because we just feel it's the right thing, and we might not be able to quite articulate that. And then to tie that with your theory about in sociology, how something is real if we believe it is. Maybe you can correct me on that.
It's real in its consequences. Yeah. The effects of that. Okay. Yeah.
Measurable. Okay. Then you answered that for me. Measurable, actual, objective consequences. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on because you're right that your colleagues, everyone's doing what they think is best. They genuinely believe. We all have different perceptions and different positions, but I don't think people are maliciously trying to push or brainwash or push a political agenda. But I would just love to hear your thoughts. Like you were saying, most people are not doing this, but as a sociologist, like social constructs, how do you balance when students have an emotionally based argument or something that's a social construct? How do you balance that?
Yeah. That's a really good question. Well, first off, when someone's really highly emotional, as someone who is in a 31-year marriage and a 37-year living together relationship, maybe 35 years we've been living together, don't respond to an emotional argument with facts and logic. You don't do that. And again, Lori would say the same thing. When I get emotional, Lori, don't respond with logic, but that's just not good. So that makes what I'm doing a little bit difficult, right? If a student goes off in some emotional place, I can't first off, I can't meet them, but I also can't respond with just pure logic. But luckily they don't do that. They rarely do it. And you're up there in the front of the room, the cameras are on, there are very few students who are going to allow themselves to go to a place where they're demonstrating some kind of emotion. They're just not going to do that. It's been many years, actually. since that happened. So I don't. So we just keep things just like yesterday. It's just a very calm conversation. You know, it's just just calm and relaxing. You know, so we keep it that way. So that's how we deal with that. You know.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's really encouraging to see, like, all of this. It's really cool to see. I don't want to take up more of your time. I know you have stuff to do with your class, with your office.
Well, here,
hours.
let's do this. Here, you can actually, you can join me, Jeff. We have a few
Sure.
questions that came up on the stream. Jeff,
So this one
And
was
maybe-
still from. Go ahead.
no, maybe we have some from today's stream too. So whatever you want to do, Jeff, just put some stuff up.
Here's from just the last one from class number 2. Web Spaghetti asked about the caste system, and I wanted to know if you had anything you wanted to say to that question, because you said you would get back to it, and we haven't yet.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna do a whole class. I'm gonna call it the Indians. But yes, caste has been more important. It is definitely more important in some areas of India, from what I understand. But it run this kind of new, sort of more urbanized, modernized, globalized groups of Indians, class becomes more important. Yeah, the two are operating together. You know, when your orientation is to the rest of the world, you know, you're from India, and your orientation, everything that you're seeing is about what's out there in the rest of the world. Caste is like, you know, you just move beyond caste, and class becomes key. But you know what? That's what we're gonna talk about with Indian students. We're gonna call it the Indians, all right? And I have a couple students from Pakistan, so that'll be really interesting to bring that in. Yeah. All right.
Here was a class from yesterday, or a question from yesterday's class.
Eating caused by treatment of blacks with place in poverty in the UK. Yeah, I think that's the same thing. Same thing happened in the UK as this is Stephen. Same thing happened in the UK as what's happened in the United States, right? And so, you know, like, people, it's really, and I'm sure Black Britons had the same response as Black Americans. You know, it's like it's a pride. You know, you're standing up to the man, you're standing up to power, and you know, you're gonna, as you're standing up and you have some kind of success of that, people feel proud of themselves for responding, just like anybody does, right? Like, students feel proud of themselves when they get the administration of their schools to have to change some kind of policy. We all do. So anyway, I would say that. Yeah. Anything from yesterday? What makes understanding in-group acceptance of a slur when it's not acceptable in intergroup so hard to understand? Man, hey, Warren, do you have an answer to that? That's actually a really cool question. So you have a slur, and that people use for themselves, you know, among themselves.
This is going back from to the very beginning when we were talking about Germany.
Yeah. Why is it so hard for people to really get that? Like,
that
just
it's okay.
Yeah, let Jews
not
can say
okay.
whatever Jews want to say to other Jews about Jews. You know what I mean? It's like, it's fine. I don't have to say the same thing. Why is it so hard?
I think people struggle with, like, as you were talking about, the measurable consequences. So beyond just the social view of it, like, we all are going to have our social views, but when, like, the CEO of Papa John's is fired in that context, where he wasn't even like, he was saying not, you know what I mean? Like, that's what, and then, so I can understand where people are like, wait, there's something off about the mechanism that's actually the consequence that's actually occurring here.
Yeah.
That's where the struggles come.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something there. Yeah, the Papa John's case was awesome. And you know, the way that happens is I was reading about that and I was like, oh, this guy. And then I saw something and I said, well, he actually sounds kind of reasonable. Wait, he doesn't sound like a guy who's just going to drop the N-bomb and call people that.
Really? So you did the research to discover that? That's interesting.
Yeah, well,
I heard
yeah.
it from you.
As soon as I saw it, I just said, wait, hang on. He was in a conference call and he dropped the N-bomb. I'm like, wait, hang on. This guy, he's pretty reasonable. Like if you heard me doing that, right? Sam Richards was in his class and he dropped the N-bomb. You're going to be like, wait, hey, I know this guy, Sam Richards. I'm sure he just didn't call somebody that, and so then I did the research and I found out the context within which he said it, which was basically a statement. And I'm like, oh my, he read something, essentially like, man, that is just, it was just,
Right.
yeah. So anyway, that's just,
So that's different than saying, okay, like I understand that means something different to like, oh, I can acknowledge that. So there's a difference.
yeah. Yeah. He's saying like, wow, you get to all these people, they use this word and it's so terrible. But he used the word. He didn't say N word. Now that's the kind of stuff that for me, I find that I could go into the ring on that one, just that. Right.
Yeah.
So but I got to be careful. One time about 4 years ago, I said that I feel like I'm a child that I put a quote up on the screen and I have to black out the word. Now, I just feel so we're adults here. We're adults in this room. That just feels so, I'm going to do it because, but it just feels so non-adult like that I would do that. It feels so disrespectful of you, my students, right? Especially disrespectful of my Black students that I would do that, right? So, but then someone tweets out, oh, Sam Richards is annoyed that he can't use the N word, right? And I'm like, okay, so now I just don't say any, like whatever, I won't say anything, because that's that one person.
It goes back to the idea of like, do you do a class like this because there's going to be potential pushback or not? How do we move forward into the future? How do we get to a world where we don't have to black out certain things? Like or do we just accept it and go along with it and say, because there's always that fine line, it's never going to be one or the other, because we have to make our way through the world at the same time, and you can't bring yourself all this hassle.
Maybe we don't, and that's kind of what it is. And again, so we're looking at two different things for me, right? It was like I have zero desire ever to use this word in the way that some of my students use it among themselves, right? Like Black students. I don't care. It's irrelevant. I never used it that way ever. So why do I care? I wouldn't use it that way. It's another thing to be, putting a quote up from a comment on a video that we got and have to blacken the word out, right? That's a completely different thing. And I think that what the question that's up on the stream is that, like, what makes it so hard for someone for people to understand that, like, well, you can't use a certain slur in the way that people who the slur is aimed at can use it. Like, you just can't do that, and you shouldn't want to do whatever it is. I just feel like the answer to that question, Jeff, if you put it up on the stream again, I can like really kind of, I think the issue is that people don't understand the power of the slur in the first place. They really don't get its meaning and its power. And so that's why we can't get it. And so that'd be my answer to that question. Yeah.
Also, I think it's larger than just one word, though. It's like there's these issues that there's larger ramifications, because if it doesn't stop, okay, it's this word, and then it's going to lead to another word. So it's not just examining the magnitude of that word, but it's really like what happens when language is affected itself, or there's certain things that some people can say but others can't in context. No, really, it's a question about how do we live in a world where context no longer matters.
Well, there you go. And how about another one? Like, a lot of my students will say, hey man, I'm using this word. I use this word with my friends because it's empowering to us. And then what am I going to say? That, oh no, you can't be empowered. You can't be empowered. You're not allowed to be empowered. You're not allowed to think for your own or have your own ideas or whatever. You can't do that. And there are all sorts of things with it. For me, I just love the being in the flow of the ideas and different perspectives and different things. But my job is to push back. It doesn't matter what you think. My job is to push back on it. So I would say, what do you mean empower yourselves? Would your grandmothers think that you were really empowering yourself by using that slur with your friends? Like, come on, man. So that would be my job,
Mhm.
right? And or if they would say the opposite, someone would say like, oh no, that word is completely disempowering. Every time I hear people of my group using it toward other people in my group, and then my job would be to say, hang on a second, who are you to say it's disempowering? Like, tell me how you think that's disempowering, because I'm really curious. I don't get that, So I push back there. So it's just whatever it is, I can push back. I guess that's what teachers do. Yeah. But understand, Warren, the thing that you see as you watch the videos, I've been skating on thin ice for 40 years. I've been teaching this class for 33 years, 32 years, 33. So I've been skating on this thin ice. And again, and I give lectures all over the world and talk to people, right? So it's like, I know people are watching me skate around on this pond, and I'm just going wherever I want to go. But what people don't know is I know where all the thin spots are, right? And it doesn't look like it. I'm going backwards and I'm flying through, and you're thinking like, whoa, this guy, he doesn't really understand how dangerous that is. And it's like, no, I do. Trust me. I know where I'm going here. I got it.
Oh, that's a great
That's
metaphor.
that's where 33 years gets you, Now, mind you, things change, right? So sometimes I say one thing and I was like, oh, okay, hang on, man. Okay. Whoa. All right. I did that. Okay. But, that's Jeff. Then Jeff has to bail me out by cutting a clip out or something,
Can I give an example of how we did that?
Yeah.
This was a long time ago. This is probably 2017, maybe. Like a long time ago in terms of the stream world. But there was a guy a student who had a small business, and we're in central Pennsylvania, and he made some joke about central Pennsylvanians being racist. And I thought it wasn't a big deal because he was obviously joking, but he was like, no. Like, all of my businesses here, like, people will really take that out of context.
No, he was of Indian ancestry too.
Yeah.
Right, wasn't he? Yeah.
He was definitely not white. And so he was like, "Could you take that out?" And so we took it out, for, to protect him. And, it wasn't what didn't take anything out of the conversation. It was just a joke that he was afraid that might get him in hot water. So
yeah, but his friends he was sort of taking a jab at all of his mostly white friends.
Yeah.
Right. Like he was having fun with it. Oh yeah, now they're all racist. In my high school, yeah, everybody's racist. Like it's kind of thing. But we then stepped in to say, oh, no, okay, we'll pull that out for you.
Because we didn't want him to get canceled, which goes to this next question.
All right. Does anyone anticipate canceling? And this trendy cancel culture may be going away one day. It's really distressing in many cases how people's entire careers are flushed. Yeah, well, it could happen. I don't, Warren, I'm curious. Well, why don't you take a stab at that first? I'm curious to what you would say, given you could have been canceled,
So does anyone anticipate canceling J.K. Rowling?
No, does anyone anticipate the trend going away?
I mean, I think about these things kind of as this pendulum swinging. Things can go too far in either direction. And we're trying to strive for something in the middle. And when it goes too far, it seems like we've seen this throughout history. I think it will have to. We can't continue in one direction too far. Like we can't. To the example we were just discussing about a world in which words lose their context. That could be taken farther. And if that goes too far, language ceases to have its utility. It will have to. I think that there will be some form of course correction. There's no identifiable way of what that looks like. When is it? Will there ever be a subset of people? Will there ever cease to be a subset of people that are frustrated with J.K. Rowling? That's how I would respond to it, though. I think it's just there's going to be increased questions asked.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Okay, I like that. I like that answer. That's a very cool answer. I think there were a lot of times when, okay, so there's the current thing right now. There's a Republican Senate candidate from Montana who's been called out because they got him on tape saying a few things about indigenous peoples, right? It's like visiting the reservation. It's like, well, but you got to get there before 8 o'clock and everybody's drunk, right?
Oh, I wasn't aware of this.
Okay, that's a trope kind of thing. Like,
Okay.
okay, yeah, okay, well, and then another one. It's like, well, yeah, but you know, there when you're in a parade or something, people don't like you. They just throw Budweiser cans at you or whatever. You'll know it because they'll throw empty beer cans at you, kind of thing. So these two things about
Okay.
Native people's drinking, right? And I think, well, okay, that's a bit of a problem. And I think, well, but alcoholism is a pretty huge issue. But he didn't. But I might have. Well, I wouldn't have said that. I might have referenced alcoholism and on reservations, you know, among Native peoples, but I wouldn't have made a joke on it, right? It wouldn't be a joke, and so then I wouldn't. And I think the canceling comes when we don't understand that. Yeah, we are speaking to something that's true, but we're making it some humorous in some kind of way. We're missing what's also really important about that, and I think that's where the most problematic canceling comes in.
Yeah, because how do we measure that? Whether it's I don't like this sense of humor, or it's like it keeps going back to what you were saying about the measurable consequences, the importance of that. I think that's such a great statement, but.
Yeah, and I think that there's a thing for me is like this is why humor is so potentially devastating. Where in the past 5 years, every time I've gotten in trouble in some way, almost always, it's because with a student that I had a problem with something, because I made a joke about something, and I'm like, okay, I had a joke. I was talking. Here's a good example. I used to be the faculty advisor to a disabled student organization where I got my PhD at Rutgers, and so I had so many awesome experiences with so many students, and it was. And anyway, I was telling a story about this experience I had with this one student who was in a wheelchair. He was paralyzed from the neck down, actually, and so. It was a very funny story with him. But he and I in a hot tub together. He wanted to go in a hot tub. We were at this hotel, and I drag him in the hot tub, and I really didn't. It's just a funny story. I won't go into it, but and it was funny to him. It's funny to me. It's whatever. And I told the story. But the reason I was telling it was because I was humanizing the experience, of him and me, and like it's humanizing. Hey, this is real. This was my friend, Well. After the class, some student came up and said, "Oh my God, I'm so glad you just told that story. It was funny. It's just like I have a brother. He's in a wheelchair, and it just humanized him. It's just like people see him, and he's in his chair, and they objectify him, and it's just like, oh, it's just terrible. But the way you told that story, it's just like I feel like, oh, if everyone would just treat people in that kind of way, right?" Then later that night, I got an email from a woman whose father is in a wheelchair, and she said, that was the most horrible thing I ever experienced. You were so mean and objectifying and making fun of this person and what, right? So it's like, wait, which one was it? Was I humanizing or making fun? Well, she thought I was making fun of him, right? And the other person thought I was humanizing him. And so which one was it? Well, if you think it's real in its consequences, right? So it was both. And so this is the place that we get in, and this is the problem of the cancel culture so often, is that so if somebody thinks it, then it's it can fly off the handles, so to speak. Yeah. That was a drag. That was one of those things that for me.
Yeah.
Just like, oh God.
Yeah. Yeah. That's that keeps going around in my mind. If you think it's real, can you say that one more time for me?
If you believe, when we believe it's real in its consequences.
In its consequences.
Right.
Because the consequences in that case, you have this one singular story, and you two people, two different experiences. We could say that's two different consequences.
It's both.
Right.
It's real for them.
It's
Their
real for
story
them.
is real.
Okay.
And the consequences are, one talks to me and says, "Thank you for doing that. Do it more." The other one writes a letter to me saying, "Hey, that was terrible. Don't ever do that again." So and then the consequences were, I don't remember if she wrote a letter to my boss or something. I don't remember. She might have, but then the consequences are, I got to respond to that, and this kind of thing, and I don't want to hurt anybody ever. I never want to do that. I don't want to offend people. I don't want to make them uncomfortable. Well, uncomfortable is fine. A little bit of discomfort is fine. But yeah, I don't.
Do we negate do you negate the positive reaction to that story, those that find the humanization from that story?
Yeah. So I talked to the other woman who said, "Hey," because she's kind of sat toward the front, and I said, "Hey, by the way, I want to just tell you something about that. I got an email, and this person, the thing that you thought was really cool, she thought she was highly offended by that." And I said, "What do you think about that?" And she said, "Well, I disagree. I don't see anything offensive in any way in that, but okay, So I was like, okay. So I don't tell the story, and I try not to use humor. And I'm actually, I did stand-up comedy when I was younger, in my early 20s. So it's like I just kind of shut that down.
That's the perfect example, I think, of what people view as the dangers of what this world we're living in. It's like, so the solution, if the solution is now that you cannot tell that story, that negates all the positive benefits of that. It negates the ability to humanize for that person, just for the sake of a small, maybe one person's subjective experience.
Well, so here it is, right? I think it's a story, a subversion of that story, or the other stories, because I have a lot of really funny stories about my time with all these students. Man, we had a lot of fun together. I was their faculty advisor, which meant, I was a faculty advisor because we had so much fun. I wanted to make sure that I was the one in charge, because otherwise somebody would, if I was just a member, someone would tell the advisor about all the fun we were having, and then I'd get in trouble, right? As a member. But I was the advisor, so it was all good. Because they were going to tattle on me, you know what I mean? So, but I never had anybody say they were offended by any of my stories. But what do? Now I'm in a world where it's just yet one more email that goes up the chain at my university. And the university doesn't read I don't know. I think we've estimated we have about 4 million comments on videos that we've put out. 4 million comments. Okay.
I would believe that.
I think something like that. I don't know. And our like ratio on videos is like 96% positive, like upvotes, right? Well, that's a lot of really positive comments. But if you're in charge, it's like, that's great. But I got this one email from a student who said they're offended by something, and I got to follow that out. And that's the world that we've created. And I can't believe I'm still working and operating in it, and I'm not just retired and playing golf with Eric.
Why
Sell
is that,
and a bunch
do
of
you
other
think?
places.
Because there is something unique about you that's allowed you to achieve something unique. It's allowed you to be the person who can recognize the thin ice on the pond and willingly skate around and do what you've mastered, this figure skating on the pond. But what is it about you that keeps you doing that when so few would be able to?
Well, one is I have tenure, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Not real tenure. I mean, my wife gave me tenure and I gave her tenure. So we don't officially have tenure from the university, but years ago in the early 90s, we decided that tenure is a job until you don't want it anymore. And so we said, well, we're going to work here until we don't want to work here. And if Penn State doesn't want us to work here, that's the moment that we don't want to work here, because we don't want to work in a place that doesn't want us to be employed. You know what I mean? So we said, okay. So we granted each other tenure, one of these, right? Like the Catholics would. And the T, right? T, instead of a cross, it was a T, right? And so then it is. We've been operating with tenure ever since then, and which is kind of wild. But I think it's just that it's part of. If you look at my astrological chart, I don't know what you know or think about astrology, but when you look at it and the real cool, like there's some really cool people doing astrology, and it's really fascinating. When you look at mine, it absolutely explains everything about why I do what I do. Yep, top to bottom, man. And I won't go into it, but it's like it's just like it was meant to be. So here I am. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. It's just like yeah. And then I think I've always been just a person who my very first wasn't a girlfriend, but in 6th grade I took a girl to a carnival that we had at my grade school. And I knew her from the church I attended at the time. And so I asked her to go. Can you imagine these two 12-year-olds like going to this carnival, you know? And later in life, it was probably like 10 years ago or so, she was on Facebook, and I think we had friended each other. And I said, hey, what do you remember of me? Go back to when we were 12 years old, right? What do you remember of me? And she wrote back and she said, you were really a nice person. I never saw you be mean to anybody. And you expected people to like you. You were just really comfortable in your skin. And you just expected that everyone was going to like you. And I thought, dang, man, there it is. I'm standing up in front of 800 people, the people watching on the stream, and I just expected everyone was going to like me. So I don't have anything to worry about. So like, yeah, just be me. It's all good, you know? And not that they should like me, but I expect that they will. And that allows me to skate around on that thin ice. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
There's something profound in that.
Yeah.
Because you never know you can't know what people are, but there's something within the very act of being willing to put yourself out there. It's so essential. And without that, nothing. It's amazing what can occur when you're willing to do that. It's what I've learned.
When students are. Like the student who you were interviewing in that video. And Jeff, I don't know if you ever put that up, a link to that up on the web, but it would be nice if you put Warren's. I'm sure you have, but even now for anybody, put up his YouTube channel information so people can go see some of your videos. And by the way, bro, the one video you made of us, you started it by sitting next to a tractor. Oh, right. I'm just like, I'm like, I don't know who this guy is, but this is awesome.
I was just in North Carolina. That's my brother's tractor. And I was bush hogging, and I just got back to Massachusetts. So now I'm in my regular recording space, but I just finished at the end of the day. I was like, this is pretty. I'm just going to sit. Sit there.
Yeah. I just thought, oh, what can't you like about that? And so I immediately thought like, okay, this guy's cool. I like that. Yeah. And also because it was very clear. And I told my wife this, it was very clear that you and I are very like-minded, that you're just trying to get to the truth. Wherever it takes you, the long and winding road, and I see it here, you do this, you're just trying to get to the truth. And I love that.
I try. It's there's something strange that occurs when you leave the classroom. There's something so special about academia, and you're so. It's a blessing to have that, and because once you move into this realm of, I'm trying to make a living through making content, you start thinking like it connects to what we were just saying. You're thinking now about the people watching. What are they thinking? Is this? I need to make a video on the opposite side of this spectrum and then you have family members that are, because when you follow logic, I try and go point by point, but if people look at that YouTube channel, they'll make judgments on what I think politically, and and that's inevitable. That's just human nature. But so even when you're trying to go point by point, that paints a picture. You can't help it. And then people make judgments upon that picture that you have family it's just, it gets very, but I strive to do what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, striving is fine. We just try to do it. I don't always do it successfully. Sometimes I trip myself up, but I don't know. Like sometimes I think, like this morning I was listening to this interview with Donald Trump. Lex Friedman did this, right?
I was just
And
listening to that this morning too.
Yeah, okay. And I'm just like, and I just love Trump's answers to some of those questions. I love the answers. One answer that I thought was so interesting, Lex says to him, hey, you gotta be willing to listen to Trump, right? You gotta be willing to listen to him just having a normal conversation. Don't listen to him at his rallies. Like, come on, man. Agree. If you saw me at a rally, you'd be like, oh, this guy's a lunatic, right? But he asked him, he said, like, come on, man, Donald, whatever he called him, president, ex-president Trump. I don't know what he called him, but you're saying that Kamala Harris is a communist. Like, come on. He's like, yeah, I know, but they call me names, so I call them names. Like, if you're gonna call me a fascist, then I'm gonna call you a communist. And I'm like, there you go. Like, there you are, right? He's basically telling you, he's saying, like, yeah, I wouldn't do that if you didn't do it to me. And maybe he would a little bit. He would have started it a little, but who knows? But maybe he wouldn't have at all. And so I don't know. I just love that. I'm just so willing to entertain anything. Yeah, I think you are too, right? That's the thing.
Yeah,
that's where
it's so important. It's just like the video for this one. That what's going on in England is alien to me. I feel like there's not as many people talking about it as it. I don't even know how to measure it. How bad is it? Overblown? But it seems so many things today just seem to be the result of not having conversations while we can have them, rather than looking back after the consequences. Everything's boils over, and then it's too late often.
Yeah.
It's the beauty of what you do in your classroom. It's having these conversations.
Yeah. Well, it's fun. It's fun. It gets me, after 40 years, I can't listen to myself anymore. So I listen to students. Hey, by the way, I want to respond to Johnny. He says I wasn't too blown away by Trump's answers, though. Yeah, I wasn't either. But like, I'm not blown away by any. Remember, I met Trump. I first came to know Trump. I lived in New Jersey. I moved to Jersey in 1985. That's the peak of Trump really kind of taking off there. So I wasn't impressed then at all. You're from New Jersey and you dealt with this guy in New York. Like, it's just like, okay, hey, man. There's a lot of hot air. You've been dealing with since the end of the 1980s. A lot of hot air. So a lot of people are not very impressed from New York and New Jersey and all. Like, just say that. So
yeah.
Hey, Jeff, do we have any? Are there any other questions from yesterday that we didn't get to? And
that's about it.
All right. Hey, well, listen. Why don't we we're at 90 minutes here. Why don't we just cut out? And Warren, so again, I want to say to folks, check out, Jeff had put it up a couple times, but maybe Jeff, you could put on the stream, or Warren, what's your,
it's Warren Smith - Secret Scholar Society, or Secret Scholars.
Secret
type in
Scholars.
Secret Scholar Society. It was a story I was writing, a movie, actually, a screenplay I was writing along before all this, the viral thing, and I started doing the content thing.
Yeah, and it'll be in our description and all. But really cool. Thanks for hopping on
it's
today.
really cool. Thank you for having me. And honestly, I have so much respect for. It's just what you're doing. I just so wish that. I hope that other educators can learn from what you're doing, because I think this is the future.
Yeah, I would like to think that it is. Well, as universities get so much more expensive, I would think it would be something or other, but
right,
where you stop you know, I tell my students, man, just pick up your phone. If you want
Yeah.
those PowerPoint slides that are on your phone, man, just ask the question, you'll get it. AI, I go and I ask a question and AI just gives me the long answer, you know.
Mhm.
Explain racism in whatever, Mexico, you know, like boom, there it is, you know. So like,
Yeah.
why would I talk about any of that stuff? It doesn't matter. So just you, like even filmmaking, right? Like doesn't matter what it is. You can find most everything you want online. So what people need are people like us to inspire them to think in certain ways about how to do things.
Yeah, the information is out there. You just have, but now the question is, what do you do with it? And that's where these dialogues come in.
Yeah. That's cool. Huh. We're gonna do a class. We're gonna have to do a class on Germany, by the way. So that'll be cool. Just Germany. There are a lot of people from Germany watching. It's really fun. All right, listen, Warren. Thanks. Really appreciate it. Let's stay in touch for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank
Be
you all
well.
so much. Yeah. All right. I'll talk to you later.